Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us on today's webinar. My name is Dimitri. I'm a product manager here at Ready Education. I'm joined by my colleague Altamash, who's also one of our senior product managers here at Ready, who's been leading the charge on a lot of these things around contact trace, our premium entitlement. So I'll do a little bit of housekeeping ground rules for today's webinar, very similar to all our product training webinars, which we got in a great cadence now, kind of monthly, giving towards the end of our month. Today specifically is our May release. So what we're really looking at here is contact trace vaccination, as well as contact trace testing. So at the end of today, the goal is that you'll be able to leave this webinar with a good understanding of how you can use the Ready platform, specifically our contact trace entitlement, to support two things on campus. One, routine testing, as well as various different testing requirements and workflows on campus, as well as vaccination, and making it a simple and easy experience for students to return to campus, show that they're vaccinated or show their progress on their vaccinations, get those things manually approved by admins or automatic. Really, we've built in a lot of flexibility here that Altamash will show you today, and then really be able to drive both of these workflows on campus so that you can have a safe return back to campus. It all really boils down back to our driving force as a group, as an organization, as Ready Education, really focuses on driving student success. And for us, one of the things we noticed, early in this pandemic was one of the things that's going to be a huge deterrent for student success will be their ability to be back on campus. We've made leaps and bounds on digital and online, but there's definitely something to be said for being on campus. And we feel one of the ways to really drive student success is to get students back on campus. And as such, we built out our contact trace entitlement, which is one of our premium entitlements. If you're interested in learning more about it and you're not familiar yet with CT, feel free to reach out to your closest rep, whether that's your customer success rep or your activation manager. But otherwise, for those of you who are here, who are using the platform and maybe even anticipating these functionality to be released, there's a lot of great stuff we're going to talk to you about today. Outside of that, we will have questions throughout, so feel free to either raise your hand or type your question in the question and answer section, and we'll be grabbing those throughout the webinar. The webinar is recorded and will be uploaded so that you'll be able to have access to that through our webinar playlist. So if you missed anything there or you want to share, it'll definitely be available as well. Outside of that, without further ado, Altamash, our senior product manager here, will take it away and walk us through the rest of the webinar. Welcome.
Thanks, Dimitri. Hey, everyone. As Dimitri mentioned, today we're going to be covering contact trace vaccination and testing. Before we jump in, again, this is a entitlement that is available for Contact Trace Plus customers. So again, if you do not have this functionality, reach out to your CSCs and they can walk through all the details around this. But for customers who already have purchased this bundle that we have, these are just additions to an already existing feature set that we launched last year, which was Contact Trace, to be able to safely reopen campus and do contact tracing on campus. This is an extension of it to support testing and vaccination-based workflows. So let's get right into it. Dimitri, do you want to go to the next slide? Yeah, so we're going to start with the vaccination workflow and the improvements we made here. Next slide. There's three things that we're going to cover, and the three things that we have done in order to accommodate or enhancements that we made that will help build out the vaccination-based workflows. The first is the ability to create custom workflows that fit your needs. So you can now create your own. If you have a specific workflow for vaccination, we know that there's a lot of differences in terms of manufacturing. If you only want to know, for example, if a student is fully vaccinated versus, I want to know if they have a first shot, second shot. All of these things can be customized with a workflow that is tailored to your campus. Once we've set that up, once we've created that custom workflow for your campus that fits your needs, we want to start getting students to be compliant and fill out the vaccination forms or provide the proof of vaccination that they have. So then we can know that, hey, a student has, provided us the information that we need, the proof that we need, so we can then validate them. And again, the last step is student provides us the proof of vaccination, we validate them or invalidate them, and we use vaccination passes to do that. So this is what we're going to cover. We can just go to the next slide. This is just the different steps that I'm going to walk through on the product itself. But the first step is we're going to be creating custom case statuses. If you're familiar with our case management system, we previously had 5 case statuses. Now you can create your own custom case statuses. And we'll review that on the product as well. Next slide. Outside of that, you could also be able to create new custom campus passes. Before, we only had 3. Now you can create your own customizable campus passes with their own specific use case and communication that you can provide the students. Next slide. We've added a vaccination template or a vaccination form that can help you quickly get started. And it's a basically plug and play form that you can quickly get started with, create your own customized language, make additions to it, and quickly publish it. Next slide. The last piece is case management. This is where, once we've set up our custom case statuses, custom workflows, and we have students completing our forms, this is where we're going to manage everything and perform our day-to-day activities in terms of who's vaccinated, who's not vaccinated. Dimitri, I'm going to share my screen so we can quickly view all of this in the product. All right, let's get started. So I'm going to start at, the main page. So this is our new navigation, and we're going to start on the dashboard page. The first thing we want to do is we want to set up our customized workflow for vaccination. And how we do that is we would go on this drop down here, and we would see campus settings. And we would just go on campus settings, and we would see various toggles here depending on our permissions. But for today's training, what's relevant is health and wellness. What you will see in health and wellness is a redesigned or new UI user interface with campus passes where you can edit, delete them, create new ones. Case statuses, you can edit, delete them, create new ones, and also pass restriction. So I'm going to walk through each of these sections just so and explain how you can build your own custom workflow for vaccination. So before, we only had 5 case statuses: clear, symptomatic, exposed, self-reported, and COVID confirmed. I've already gone ahead for the purpose of today's training and created some extra ones, but basically the idea is case statuses is a way for administrators to triage and categorize all the data that we're getting from students when they complete their form or provide any type of health information. There's a lot of health information. We want to categorize it, let's say, into: are they exposed? Are they symptomatic? Are they fully vaccinated? And this is what statuses allows us to do, so we can easily manage all this information that's coming in. And we can come here, create a new status for vaccination purposes. I've already created one, but just to show you, we can come here and say, select a color and type a name. So in this case, we want to only know if a student is fully vaccinated. So we will just write in fully vaccinated. And if you want, we can assign a action to it. Basically, if you want to send future notifications to the student, we can create a subject and message, and it just creates a template that if you want to send further notifications, we can just use this template in the future as well. For now, we're not going to use this. We also need to assign it to a campus pass. And just for the sake of now, I'll talk about campus passes in a bit. We're going to assign it to an already created vaccination pass. We can save it. I've already created a copy of it here, but it's simply fully vaccinated and your pass is created. This is just how you can create a pass or a case, sorry, how you can create a case status. And this is how you would create it. You select a color, you add a name to it. You can have a communication template if you want, and you can make changes to it via edit, or you can delete it. In this case, we're just
going question here, Altomash.
Yeah.
Is it safe to say the case statuses are not user facing? So this is for our internal case management. You can see it on the campus cloud, but students won't see these different statuses, correct?
Yes, that is 100% true. This is just a way for administrators to manage and triage all the information that students are providing them through the form system. So students give us forms and we're just, triaging them. Are they clear? Are they vaccinated? And yes, this is internal use only. I'm going to talk about specifically building workflows and case statuses. I explained how you can create statuses. Now it's about how do I build a workflow? So what you see here is I've created previously we had clear, symptomatic, exposed, self-reported, COVID confirmed. I've already pre-created a workflow, and how my workflow works is, for let's say, Ready campus in this example, I want students to complete a vaccination form, and I only want to know when they're fully vaccinated. I don't want to know if they have a first shot or second shot, only fully vaccinated. So I've created that status over here, and I'll edit it and show the details. So the name is vaccinated, the color is blue, and it's assigned to a pass. But I don't want students to complete a form and automatically get the pass, because that defeats the purpose of me validating and ensuring that the student is actually fully vaccinated. So I want to have a step before that in my workflow that says, okay, the student has completed a form. Now I want to make sure that that someone on my team, an administrator on my team, is going to review, and they're going to validate that the pass is accurate or not accurate. And in that case, I've created a new status called vaccination pending approval. So basically what this means is a student completes a form and automatically they get this status. And what this means is that basically student has submitted their vaccination form. Now it's pending approval from someone on my team to review it and either approve it or decline it. So there's another step that I've added here as well. So someone reviews it and then they can turn it to vaccinated, or they can, let's say, make the student, okay, take it back to clear, and say, a student, you need to resubmit, the information is not accurate, or you've actually showing symptoms or whatever the information may be, and you can take it to another status. So I've also created another status called retest required. And what this means is, in my workflow, let's say a student has, vaccinated, I approve it and it's all good to go, and I make them vaccinated. But what happens if a student, there's something wrong with their test? Maybe the image is blurry, maybe, it's not the correct information that I require. In that case, I've created a new status called retest required. And all this means is for the student that, hey, you need to get, or for the administrator managing it is, hey, I've reviewed the form that the student has said, I haven't accepted it, and the student needs to get retested. And so I've created this here, retested, the color is orange. And basically, this is how I've set up a workflow where I only want to know if the student is fully vaccinated. And I also want to be able to have someone on my team approve or decline it. And if it's declined, I want to be able to set it to a specific status which says retest required. So my team and people on my team know that, students submitted a form, but now they need to get retested or give the proper information needed, so I can, again, validate and approve their vaccination form. And this is the workflow that I've created here. Any questions about this before I move on to Campus Pass?
Yeah, there's a few questions here. Let's hop here. Adriana had some really good questions. Here you're referring to retest required, Altamash, but you're also talking about the vaccination workflow. So do you mean to say a kind of a re-upload of your vaccination, or are these two separate workflows, one for the vaccinated workflow and then one here for the testing workflow?
So I haven't spoken about testing. I'm only talking about vaccination right now. Testing is going to be covered after. This is only for vaccination. I guess I can rename this. It could be, resubmit vaccination form. I can rename it for clarity purposes, but this is only related to the vaccination workflow that we're talking about right now.
Okay, fantastic. So I think that covers your question there, Adriana. Let us know if you have any other, if that didn't, feel free to kind of chat back in. I'm going to go ahead and solve those. Another question from Adriana was, will this work similar to the current positive COVID test report versus confirmed status? So I guess, will these new case studies work similar to the old case studies we had that were the defaults?
What you have right now will work as it already does. This is just adding customization layers to it, where you can create your own statuses, and then you can set how you want them to work with Campus Pass, which I'll talk about next.
Perfect. Another question here, Robert asked, for the internal use, can you restrict access to specific Campus Cloud users?
Can you restrict access? Yeah, so there are permission layers. In order to access this, you would need access to, I'll talk about permissions as well at the end, but basically you need a specific set of permissions to be able to make changes here.
Okay.
You need
so I guess
access
in
to
short,
case management, yeah.
Okay, so in short, yes, there is a specific permission you would need to do what we're showing right now, and that would be an additive permission on top of what people might already have.
It's baked into what people already have. Yeah, I'll talk about it at the end.
Okay, perfect. All right. I think that's it for now. Let me just check actually. So Janice had a good question here. Let me just read it real quick. This one's around uploading a file of fully vaccinated students into Ready Education. So is it
Yeah,
possible? They're already doing their workflow
yeah,
offline.
I'm
So is
gonna,
it
yeah,
possible to upload?
sorry, Dimitri, for the sake of time, all of that is gonna be covered. Yeah, you can do that as
Yeah,
well, and I'll walk through it as well. Sorry about that.
fantastic.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
no, that makes sense. Janice will hit that in a little bit. That's it. No
yeah,
more
so
questions for now.
for using our system now, we can create case statuses, and we know about how we can set up our workflow. In this case, we've set up our vaccination workflow. Now, case statuses, as I mentioned, again, is a way for internal administrators to be able to manage all the information coming in. But now the administrators need a way, when they're managing this information, to communicate that information to students. And how that communication happens is through campus passes. Before, we had 3 passes, which was yellow, green, and red. And now you can create your own passes. We also had a gray pass, which was a default pass, but now you'll be able to create your own passes. To create your own pass, you just click new pass. You can add a title and the message that you want. You can select an icon and a color. I will talk about the pass type at the end of the workflow session, but for now, these are the information that is needed. And whatever you put in content is what the student will see on the pass itself. So if you want to give information around, let's say a student needs to resubmit their vaccination form, you can add information here. If you want to provide information around, for our workflow where we have, for example, pending approval, we can provide information around an SLA, please wait until your vaccination form is approved, and then SLA around how long will the process take. They will know what the decision is, if it's been approved or not. So examples like this, we can add other information such as phone numbers or other locations that they need to access to get vaccinated, so on and so forth, if if their vaccination form has not been approved. So this is basically a way for students to see the information and to show the information that, hey, I'm vaccinated or I'm not vaccinated. I've already created 3 passes. The first one is for our vaccination pass, and it ties to our vaccination status. I've created one for vaccination pending approval, which is the approval piece, and it's related to this status. And I've also created one for retest submitted, which was the resubmit vaccination form. I'll change the name for clarity purposes, but it's tied to this pass over here. One thing to note is we need to be able to link a status to a pass. And as I mentioned before, how you can do that is when you create a status, you will see assigned campus pass. So you can come here and select the pass that you want the status to be linked to. So an administrator has a way to categorize the information the student is providing. Now they want to communicate to this, that information to the student and give them next steps. There needs to be a link between that. And the link between case status and campus pass happens in case status. And let's see an example for vaccinated over here. Vaccinated case status has a name, and I've assigned the campus pass, vaccination pass to it. And now they're both linked together. And I've done the same with the other 2 as well. Let's have a quick look. Vaccination pending approval and vaccination, resubmit vaccination form over here. So they're all linked together. So when a student triggers, I'll mention this when I go over forms, but when a student, let's say, triggers or has been completes a form, you can automatically set it up that they'll get a vaccination pending approval, that someone needs to review it on the team, and then automatically the student will get the campus pass and be communicated that information, so you don't have to do anything. And that is what the link allows you to do. Any questions about campus pass?
A quick thing, these statuses can link to any number, to only one campus pass, correct? But it can be the same campus pass, so multiple statuses can link to the same campus pass, right?
Yeah.
Perfect.
One campus
Right.
pass can only link to one status, but one status can link to as many campus passes. For example, I can have vaccinated here. I can take this vaccination pending approval, and I can link it to vaccination pass as well. So I can link any statuses to multiple statuses to a single pass. Yes.
Okay, perfect. And if anybody had questions about this, I know there's a question here. We are going to be providing a link to the recording of this webinar. So if there's a lot of information here that you'd like to follow up on, we have docs, we're going to have recordings of this webinar, so not to worry. The one question was, is this functionality live yet? Some people are looking for this and can see edit buttons or can't see what we're showing here.
Yeah, it's going to be live in a few hours. So it's going to be live by 5 p.m. Yes, again, It's going to be live later in the evening today. Their rough estimate is around 5 p.m. EST, but it could be slightly later than that. But that's the rough time we're aiming for. But it will be live today.
Okay, fantastic. So maybe, we could say tomorrow when you guys check in on the campus cloud tomorrow, you should be able to see that.
Yeah.
And then final question here from Allison. Will those who have submitted vaccine info already get the pending approval message?
Pending approval message, vaccine. Yeah, I'll talk about students who've already completed their forms. At the end of it, I just want to go through the workflow. Does that?
Okay, I think it's
So,
in specifically
yeah,
if you already have a vaccination form.
Yeah, I'll answer it at the end. I just want to go through the workflow first.
Perfect.
All right, let's continue.
No more questions.
Let's continue with the with the next step. So now that we've created our case status, campus pass, and linked them both together, the next step is, we want to create our form. So if you go to our form, what you'll see is templates that we've already created. I've already set one up, but we can just see what it looks like. Vaccination form, and press next. And basically, it's a template that you can use. You can make changes to it any time that you want. For example, we have you been fully vaccinated for COVID-19? That's what our workflow was. We can see which manufacturer or which vaccine did you go with, or if you haven't been vaccinated, and if you want to add other manufacturers of the vaccine, you can add them here as well. And you can add more questions based on your workflow as well. For this template that we have, it's basically, have you been fully vaccinated? Which vaccine did you use? And if you have not. We've also added some logic here that if you have not, basically you will automatically be sent to this page over here that you have not been vaccinated, and you can establish next steps here. If you have been vaccinated, the student in this case will automatically go to the next question where they will be asked to upload their vaccination card. So they upload their vaccination card, and this is a photo upload. So they upload it, and if they upload it, they go to the next step, which in this case could be fully vaccinated. But on our workflow, what we've done is we've said, hey, we want the student to not get fully vaccinated, but it's vaccinated pending approval. So they've completed the form, but it's pending an approval. And we can add all the information here that the student would see and complete our form. One thing to note is, if you notice when you've created forms before, if you want to link a form result, which is the end page of a form, to a status, before what you saw here was medium risk, low risk, high risk. But now what we've changed is, because we've added custom case statuses, you can automatically tie it to a specific status. So based on our form, let's say a student, the first question that they say is that they use the Pfizer vaccine. They uploaded their vaccination card. We want them to go to a specific case status. So they can automatically get the vaccination status, but no, we want them to be vaccination pending approval because we want to approve it. So we add this status in the form. And this is what allows us to link when a student completes a form and provides us information with the status that we've created. We need to make sure that the logic is added and the appropriate case status is here. And then if let's say a student has not been vaccinated, we can go over here and add our resubmit vaccination form, or we can add another case status in the case that they haven't, to inform the student that, hey, you need to get vaccinated. I've already set a form up for this. We can quickly review the form. Again, it's the same questions that we saw, but again, as you saw, it's vaccination pending approval and resubmit vaccination form. That's what I've added here. I'm going to go complete the form on the app right now and show what that looks like. Vaccination form. Dimitri, if you want to do that as well. So I'm
Will you show your screen as you?
Yeah. Do you see my screen, Dimitri?
No, we don't see your mobile phone.
Oh, you don't see my mobile phone. Okay. Do you see it now?
Yeah, now we see. Yeah, now we see your mobile phone.
So I'm on the app. I'm going to click the vaccination form I've created. I'm going to press next. And let's say if I select I have not been fully vaccinated, let's just test that out and see what happens. I automatically get the resubmit vaccination form card because this is how I set up the form. Again, it can be changed. I'm going to recomplete the form and actually mention that I took the Pfizer dose. add a photo. Let's see. Right, I'm gonna take one of my cat's picture, sorry. I haven't gotten my vaccine yet. Here, submit. Done. And now basically what's going to happen, as you can see, vaccination pending approval. It has my name here, the date here, and it says, please wait until the form is approved and what the SLA is. And this is what it would look like when I complete the form after I've set it up. I can come on my vaccination form and I can see the results. I've created, Dimitri just created it and I created mine as well. You can see the results here. You can filter them by an audience that you've created or by a specific question or a date range. You can download that data here as well. The next step here is now that we've set up our case statuses and Campus Pass, we've set up our form, we have students completed the form. Now we want to manage our workflow and we do that on cases. As you can see over here on cases, all your custom passes that I've created over here, vaccinated, pending approval, resubmit, you'll see them here, and how many cases that are active over here, right? So we have 2 vaccination pending approval. So, let's sort by that status over here, vaccination pending approval. And it's both me and Dimitri who just completed that form right now. So let's go for my user. As you can see, I completed the form, I got vaccination pending approval. And now let's say I want to review the form that happened. Okay, so there were 2 forms submitted by myself. Let's review the first form. Okay, they said that I have not been fully vaccinated. Okay, so this is not relevant. Then they submitted a second form. Let's say they made a mistake. Okay, they got the Pfizer dose. They have, let's say in this example, this is an actual vaccination card. So they uploaded the vaccination card and it's pending approval now. So now that I've reviewed it, I can approve it and I can simply come here, make the change that, hey, I've looked at, Altamash's vaccination form. I looked at their card, I looked through the form piece and I approve it and I can write a note here. Vaccination has been approved. And then I can come here and save this and the system will add this here. So you can see there's a status change to vaccinated and now my user is vaccinated over here. And you can also see that I added notes here if I want to see notes for future use. Let's look at what this looks like on the app for my user. So I'll go back, sorry. Yeah, so I come over here on the profile page, which is the last tab that you see, health and wellness. Then I click on my Campus Pass and now it's turned blue after review. So it was before pending review. Now it's been reviewed. Now I have my vaccination pass, my name here, and I've been fully vaccinated or any other information that I need to add over here. And that's an example of, a vaccination workflow that I've created that requires, approval from someone on my team to review it. But again, if that's not required, you can set it up and customize it how you want to. Now we can take all the questions around the vaccination workflow, Dimitri.
Yeah, so there's one question here specifically on if an institution decides to make it mandatory to have a vaccine to come to campus, how would you build that into the workflow?
Yeah, so if it's required, the first thing would be I would, my case, I can change the case status differently. So how I would set it up would be, I would create vaccinated and I would set it up as vaccinated. And I would also set one up as vaccination pending approval. So I would only use these 2. And then I would create a new form in our, form system over here. I would use this vaccination template and all I would ask was, hey, if it's required for students to have been vaccinated to come on campus, I should just have a form and the form should have, let's just use this template, test. I would have, if I want to know which vaccine they've gotten, if I don't want to know, I can remove this question and I can simply have, please upload your vaccination card, which is the best way of proof of validation. If, for your institution, there's another way that you want proof of validation, you can input that in the form and whatever that method of proof that you're using for a student to provide you, they just need to submit that. And you would simply, once you publish the form, go to cases And once students such as start submitting those forms, they go through this approval process, which is what we have here, vaccination pending approval. Let's say I have one over here. I can quickly just go over here. Dimitri's left. For example, let's use Dimitri in this case. He's required, so he filled out his form. He had, a relevant image. Let's say this is the vaccination form itself, and then I can approve or decline it. It's the same process, but it's simplified a bit where I don't need to use the, resubmit form piece. It's simply like, you've done it, let me know, and someone on my team will review it, and then we'll approve it.
Okay, perfect. Another quick question here. If the students have a vaccination pass, it potentially might not make sense to have them do the health screenings daily. So is there any logic there on the Ready platform to consider health passes and vaccination passes and health screenings?
Yeah, I wanted to leave these two things at the end after I took the question, but I guess I'll just talk about them right now. So there's two key things to note. First thing is how case statuses work and how campus passes work. So case statuses work using an escalation process. And how escalation means is bottom meaning it's like clear, top meaning it's like, it's basically as you go up, you start escalating to different tiers. From an administrator standpoint, the person managing this, you can take any student, faculty, staff, whoever you're working with, you can take their status and move it up this escalation ladder, or you can move it down. That is what an administrator can do. And how you do that is through editing a case status. So I can move it down to clear, or I can move it up. But students or anyone that uses a form, the only thing they can do is they can move up the escalation ladder. They cannot move down. So what does that mean? That means, let's say I'm a student that's clear, and I complete a form and say that I complete a self-reporting form, say that, hey, I have COVID-19, and someone from the team confirms it. We don't want a student, so a student has gone from bottom to up. Now, we don't want the student completing another form saying, okay, the next day I'm clear, and they going back down on themselves. No. Only the administrator can make you back into clear. So this is why this check is in place. And how you create your workflow is very important around this. So how I've set it up in this way is, if I am clear and I complete, let's say, a vaccination form, I'm vaccination pending approval. That's my status. A student can, by mistake or by accident, or, they're just playing around with forms. They're submitting, let's say, COVID self-reported forms or symptom forms where they're showing symptoms. All those, like, their status will not change. It will remain the same, because in the escalation status, it's higher, right? So a student cannot make themselves if their students cannot make themselves go down. If they're vaccination pending approval, they can only go up from here. They cannot go down. This is how this specific workflow is set up. But let's say a student does, in fact, let's say if a student commits is doing an error, in that case, it's handled. Let's say you want to set up a different workflow where you want to say, hey, a student can submit a vaccination form, but at the same time, if the next day a student, let's say, is self-reported, or they're saying they have COVID the next day after they, submit the proof of vaccination, you will still want to know that. So in that case, you would move this down here. In this case, student is clear, they submit their vaccination form, it's pending approval. The next day, they say they're self-reported, right? So the student can only go up. Now the administrator is looking at all of this data in their cases. So all of this stuff is going to be logged over here. And you're seeing, for example, daily pre-screening, all the things that they have here in their form. You're seeing all the changes that are happening in their case, and you know what their current case status is. So you're managing all of this information and saying, okay, student, you were vaccination pending approval, now you're self-reported. Okay, let me look at your latest form, look at that data and see if it's like accurate. If it is, I can move you to COVID confirmed. But if it's, let's say, a mistake, then I can just review your pass and make it vaccinated. In my workflow, I just set it up in this way, where once a student submits a vaccination form, until they're either accepted or declined the vaccination, they can't do anything else. So again, there's an escalation process here that's at play. So any questions about this first piece?
Yeah, so there's definitely a few questions that came in, but they're all related to what you covered on the escalation piece. So before we jump to that, I just want to finalize this question since we're recording here. But as far as the health screenings, the daily pre-screener, does that go to everybody, including if you have if you're vaccinated status? Is there any way to omit certain people from getting the reminder? If we say, hey, if you're vaccinated, you don't need to fill this in anymore.
Right now, there isn't. The notification will be sent to everyone. Yeah, so that's an area of improvement we can look into. But for now, if you have that notification toggled on, it goes to everyone. Yeah.
Okay. And the user can always toggle it off if they're vaccinated. They can always toggle it off, right? Yeah.
But students can go in their app and toggle it off if they're vaccinated. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. So, Jacob, you asked around kind of the vaccine status. Does it interact or completely overwrite the tracking workflow? I think Altamas just covered that as far as how the different statuses are kind of an escalation, so that you can have multiple workflows working at the same time. They won't overwrite each other in so far that they follow the escalation flow.
And
so you could always pre-screen.
Yeah, I'll present the actual use case for this that's we've heard of from partners when we while working on the solution with them. So a student's clear, a student completes a vaccination form, and now they're fully vaccinated and approved, right? Now the student is going around campus and they're scanning QR codes and they're going to events with other students. In this case, what we want is, let's say there's another student who is COVID confirmed, and so let's say there's one student that's COVID confirmed, and he basically, is within the time limit where if we do contact tracing, it will trigger all the other students that are exposed. So let's say there's 50 students, one student is COVID confirmed. What we want is basically the one student who is vaccinated to not be included in that list. So yeah, one COVID confirmed, one vaccinated, and the remaining 48, they don't have their vaccination form. So what we want is the COVID confirmed, when you do contact tracing, triggers the 48 students to be exposed, but that one student who is fully vaccinated, we don't want him to be counted. So this is an example of how you can set up a workflow where if you're fully vaccinated and you're above, let's say, the exposed status, the student who is vaccinated will remain vaccinated.
We do have a number of questions, so maybe we could try and speed through it. I know we still have testing to go through. Maybe real quick fire here, Altamas. Yes. If the school wanted to do the pre-screener, this school in specific, Michael, has 14 questions, plus they want to make sure that they have a vaccine before they come to campus. How would that work? Would they basically have a vaccine that expires daily versus the non-expiring passes and statuses?
Yeah. So so the question is, they want students to complete daily screening forms.
Both and they have to have the vaccination as well, vaccination pass.
So in that case, you can set up a similar workflow to this for vaccinated. So if you're fully vaccinated, you're good to go. And you can use the vaccination form that we have over here. And you can also set up your daily pre-screening form as well. And let's say if a student is showing symptoms, how you would set that up is you would have vaccination below symptomatic in this case. It's not ideal to have it set up this way because a student can always override their vaccination status, but if you would want to set it up that way, it can be done. Ideally, the only overrides for vaccinated are, you can have a new status created for, a student is vaccinated, but a student, let's say, post-vaccination symptoms, as an example.
And I guess could this use also for what if you contract COVID-19 post-vaccination? I guess you could create a new status. If that ends up becoming a common thing, we can have it as a new status. Otherwise, I guess you can always just manually change their case from vaccinated to COVID-19 confirmed. And then when they've passed that and they're, back to testing negative, they can be manually moved back to vaccinated.
Yeah, so in this case, I can set it up like this. So a student has gone through this entire process. They've been fully vaccinated. Now let's say a student completes a daily pre-screening form or completes a self-reported form. I can have a new question added to those forms where, even if they're vaccinated, so let's say I can set up my form, daily pre-screening form, in this manner. I'll give an example quickly. Pre-screening, here, test. So I have daily pre-screening here. I'm asking all my questions over here as you normally have, but I'll add an extra question, which is going to be, oops, sorry. Add an extra question, which is going to be multiple choice, and it's going to be, have you already been vaccinated? And it can be yes or no, right? If you're yes, then you can go to a specific set of questions, and the results that you get will trigger either the new status that you've created here. If you're no, you go through the existing process that you have over here. So you can create within the form itself those nuances.
So I just want to be mindful of time. There is still a few questions here, Altamash, but I don't know, we have about 20 minutes, or a little less than 20 minutes left on the webinar. If you want to jump to maybe testing, and then we can come back to some of these questions. Not to worry anybody, if you did have a question that didn't get answered today, like I said, we'll be posting the web recording as well as some documentation, and then you'll have a team helping you and your institution and your other counterparts at your institution to launch this and activate it. So you'll have a chance to work with us on a smaller, more one-on-one basis to get these things activated. So not to be too concerned if you don't get your questions answered today.
We are working on our activation process, and we will be, reaching out and setting up everything and making sure that you guys are set up for success. I wanted to touch on one last thing. So as their case statuses have an escalation process. I mentioned this at the start, that campus passes have like this type over here, which is either clear or restricted. Now that we have, campus passes that can be customizable and custom made, we're surfacing, what the system was doing automatic on its own, so you guys can create your own custom workflows. So let's say if for a student that is, let's say, COVID confirmed, what you had was restricted. And what this means is a student will get a restricted pass and give a warning when the user checks in. So basically, if they're trying to QR scan into places, it will tell them that you cannot enter the space and show them their campus pass, which is going to be, you can't enter campus. It's the red pass that you're familiar with. The main thing to know about the red pass is that it's sticky, that it remains as is, and it does not change. The alternative to that pass is what we have right now, is it clear. And this is basically when I create a pass, I can set it as clear, where it lasts for the whole day, and it allows permission for the student to, to participate on campus and be on campus for the 24-hour period. So for example, if you're doing a daily symptom checker, like we have right now, and you're making sure that all your symptoms are clear, you're allowed to come on campus for that day. With vaccination, what we will be doing in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll be adding a new type over here, and that's specifically for vaccination. And it's basically the clear, but a sticky version. What happens with clear right now is after 24 hours, it turns into a gray pass. Let's say if you're a student that's vaccinated, you don't want to complete a vaccination form every single day. It doesn't make sense. You've been vaccinated, you don't want to complete the form daily. So we will be adding in the next 2 weeks or so is a new type, which will be clear, but it's going to be sticky, meaning for this vaccination pass, that's a good example to show. I can simply select the new version that will be added, and what that will be, you're fully vaccinated. Your pass will remain, and it will be sticky. And after 24 hours, if it will not turn gray. So that will be added in the next 2 weeks or so. And basically, what you would have to do, you can set up your workflows in your passes right now. All you would need to do once that's set up is take this and clear and change it to the new clear that's going to be added.
So I do see a couple of questions around that. So basically, if your institution is following a model where even with vaccination, they still need to do a daily pre-screening, then you'll use the clear one that we have currently, which is not sticky. It, like Altamash said, goes away after 24 hours. If your institution instead is doing, if you're vaccinated, we don't have to ask you any more daily screeners. We trust that with the vaccination, you'll be covered enough where we don't have to follow your symptoms or track you daily. In that case, you'll use this new type that we're introducing in a couple of weeks. And that answers a few of the questions here, specifically Grimes' question related to completing the form.
Yeah.
Cool. Altamash, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to cover the question. I'm doing all of this outside of my system. How do I, add all of this data over here? So basically, we have the ability to import with CSV. There is a download sample file with all the fields, and basically, whatever system you're using, if it's a case that is already in our system or not in our system, you can add all the information about that case and it will be added to the system. So if for example, if the case does not exist, it will create the case and it will create the specific statuses and all the information that you're putting in. If a case already exists and you're adding more information to it, it will add all that extra information to it. And all that information, again, will appear in this history log, the case history, where you can see all the changes that you've added. So you can do that as well via CSV import. We will be building an API for this, so you can automate that process, but the ETA for that right now is August.
Altamash, if some of these things get changed, for example, a student's vaccination pass gets accepted or approved, would a student get a notification that their pass has changed?
What the student would, so once a student is automatically approved, what the student would get is that their pass would turn blue, but they would not get a notification right now. No, it would just be that their pass has changed. There is no.
So the next time they use the pass, they'll see it updated, but they just won't get a notification right now.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And then just quickly here, Albert, a question on the vaccination status. All the vaccination statuses, the new ones, they work similarly how we had before with the QR scanning, correct? So you're just creating new ones and all the same functionality that we had before.
Yeah. Yeah, as I mentioned, you just have to make sure that if you want to, the new passes that you're creating, if they're not allowed to be on campus and you want to restrict that check-in, that they're set as restricted. Yeah, but it works the same as like what you have right now set up, none of that is changing. But if you want to add new statuses and passes, just make sure that they're using the right type. And again, when we're going to be activating and working with you guys to set all of this up, we will be learning about your workflows and making sure you have all the information needed to set up quickly.
Fantastic. So we can continue. There's one more question, but we'll maybe grab it afterwards. Maybe you want to finish up with the testing workflow.
Yeah. So for testing, basically, it boils down to three things. First, creating our routine testing workflows, based on the schedule that works for us. Then it's, getting proof of testing submission, and then it's automating the process. So what we have is pass restrictions. That's going to help us set up routine testing and when that needs to happen. We also have a testing form that we've added that you can use to quickly get set up. We've added date of last tested and some new features I'll go over that help us manage the testing process better. And again, everything that we need to manage is in one place in case management. I'll get started with this piece. So now that we know how to create a status, set up our statuses, and use the escalation process, set up passes, and use pass types, the next item over here is pass restriction. This is specifically for testing, and we can enable or disable it if we need it or not. But basically, what this does is, after a student has submitted their testing date to us and we have it in our system, we can automatically say, look at that data and say, hey, I want students to get tested, let's say every 7 days. If the testing date is, after 7 days, it will automatically change the student's pass. For example, let's say a student needs to get tested every 7 days. They got tested on May 19th last time, and the 7 days has passed. So let's say they were clear for 7 days. Now they're no longer clear. The student's pass will automatically change, and they will be requested to, get retested. So this is what this allows us to do for our testing workflow. I'm going to change this to retest required.
While you're doing that, Altamash, can this be done by audience? Can we say, for example, all athletes would have a pass restriction, whereas maybe your average student would not?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Could we set the pass restrictions here on the number of days for testing? Could we set that up for a specific audience?
No, it's tied to all for now.
Okay.
Yeah. One thing to note about this testing is, let's say a student has confirmed COVID and they're not allowed to be on campus, and let's say we're using this testing date. After 7 days, we don't want their pass to change to, get retested. We already know that. So if the student has a restricted, if they have a campus pass that is restricted, that will not change. If you have a red pass, you're not allowed to be on campus because you're, for example, COVID confirmed, then doesn't matter how many days have elapsed, your pass will not change. It will still remain red. Once we introduce the new type, for example, that I mentioned before for vaccination, where you're clear and it's going to be sticky. What that means is, let's say I'm fully vaccinated, and last time I got tested was 2 months ago, for example. I don't want my pass to change. I want it to stay sticky and I want it to stay vaccinated. And the new type is also going to work that way if you select it. The only case where the pass restrictions is going to work is on this clear pass over here. Because if we already know you're COVID confirmed, we don't want your pass changing because it's just causing confusion, unnecessary confusion, and it's not relevant. If you're fully vaccinated, you don't need to get tested, so we don't want your pass changing. But let's say for example, you're an athlete, you need to come and fill out your form on a daily basis, and you need to get tested on a weekly basis. For those related use cases where we need continual testing, we need to make sure that the pass that's being used is clear over here. And what this does is that your pass resets every 24 hours. And this is what we will be using. And this is what will affect our pass restrictions. So first thing it's going to check for is compliance. And the next thing it's going to check for is, have you been within that date range or not? So it only affects if you're clear. Now that we've set up our pass restrictions, we can quickly go and create our testing form. I've already created one, so I'm just going to quickly show that testing form over here. This is our testing form. It says, have you been tested, yes or no? And it basically upload a picture of your test result. Again, this can be changed to any other proof that you need from the student, and you can use the different types of question types that we have. And it also asks, like, was your test result positive or negative? And based on that, let's say if the student's test result is positive, they automatically become self-reported. If the student's test result is negative, they become clear. And let's say if a student hasn't taken the test, they need to get the retest done. And that's how I've set up the form. Dimitri, if you want to complete the form, I'll complete it on my end as well.
While we're doing that quickly, Altamash, if for the export, when we're exporting this data, would partners be able to get the images as well in the export?
I believe so, but I have to get a confirmation on that.
Okay. So Galen, we'll look into that one and let you know.
So I
export the data, I don't know if the images will be included.
I open my testing form over here, testing. I'm going to press next. Yes, I have been tested. Let's add a photo. There. My test result was negative. And submit. And I can see, so in this case, I didn't change my pass. Sorry, I'll fix that right now. And yeah, but this is just an example, a student, just to show you again, I'm already fully vaccinated over here. And then I completed a form that would make me clear. As a student, I can go back down. Administrator needs to do that. I'm fully vaccinated. So right now, this workflow setup doesn't matter if I complete another testing form. I don't require further testing. I'll quickly fix that by going over here, but an administrator can change all of this information. So I'm coming here, I'm going down the escalation ladder here and making the student clear. And now I'm going to resubmit the form again. Testing form. Next. Yes. Save. Next. As you can see, you are cleared to campus. So I completed my form, I was cleared for it, and now I get this pass. So now that students are finishing the testing form and we're getting information around testing, how we manage that information is in the cases view. What we've added here is a testing date where you can filter across different date ranges. So you can see who who's tested within, let's say if your cadence is weekly, you can select the last 7 days, who's tested in the last 7 days, you can see over here, or who has not and who's outside of this range. And then all that data, we can download it after filtering as well. So in this case, I'll go to my user and I'll see last testing date. I don't have any. The idea here is I need to be able to add this date first. And there, after I complete the form, there's 3 ways of adding it. So I can come to this user specific case. So I went on my case and I see, okay, this student has a testing form. Let's look at the testing form. All the information is here. The date is May 27th, or let's say if I have an image required, it would say the date of the test on the proof of validation. So I can come here and manually add that date. Let's take that date to be 27th in this case, and let's save that. Oh, let's add a new note. So that's one way to add testing information. And now you can see I have a last testing date. And if I go back to cases and filter across, the date range, I will be in that date range, and you can see my date over here. So that's just one way to add it. Now, let's say you're not using our system to collect all this information, or you have, a vendor you're working with that does all the testing for you, or health authorities from the state. What you can do is you can take all of that information that they have for the testing date, and again, use import from CSV, and I'll add all that information in our system. And there's going to be columns for basically the testing date where you can plug in, and you will see all this information here. Once you have the API, you can use the API to do that. The other way, and again, if you want to save time because you're getting a lot of students using our system, what you can do is you go to forms. This is our testing form. I can go to results. Let's say I only want to look at the last 7 days. I go to the last 7 days, for example, here. I download this CSV file here. I go to cases and I import from CSV, and I just copy paste the same columns that match what I need. And I paste them in the import CSV, and then I basically import the CSV file here. So I'm just copying the columns, pasting them in the new CSV file, and I'm importing the CSV file. And all your testing data will be automatically updated through CSV. And again, once we have the API, you can automate all of that as well. So those are 3 different ways you can add the testing date. And after you've added the testing date, you can filter all of this information. The main thing here is, let's say a student misses this date. For example, our current timeline that we've set is last 7 days. What happens, if I change the date? In this case, what happens if the student bypasses that 7 days? So I'm going to just go back in the past and make my testing date, just for the training purposes, the 19th. That's outside the 7-day window, and just show you what happens to the student. Let's pass. As you can see here, automatically the pass changed to retest required because I'm outside that 7-day window. And this clarifies to the student, hey, I need to get retested. You can add the specific information that the student needs to know of, where they can get retested, any number they need to call to get further information. And once that is done, the student can get retested, submit the form again, and then, it goes through the same process.
In this case, Ultimus, you could support whether or not, if they're vaccinated, they need to be retested. So if they're vaccinated, maybe not, or if they do still need to be retested despite being vaccinated, you can handle both of those workflows just by ordering the case statuses, correct?
Yeah. Basically, yeah, that's accurate. You can set it up however you want to. It's by the escalation of the case statuses.
So if somebody wanted to say, hey, they always need to be tested, then that status, that whatever status you call it, would be at the top. If you think vaccination is kind of the end game, and as soon as you're vaccinated, you don't need to be retested and rescreened, then you put vaccination at the top.
Yeah.
We are pretty much out of time. We're actually at the top of the hour. We did handle all the questions except for maybe a couple here in the chat. So if you did have any of the questions that you wanted to get answered, like I said, there'll be many opportunities for you to do so. And there'll be some documentation.
I can stick around and take some of the questions if that's fine.
Okay, we can maybe stick around for another. We can stick around for another few minutes here. There is one question I do know that we can hit. If anyone else has questions, feel free to toss those into the Q&A or the chat now. What I will say is for everybody else who's kind of heading out at the hour mark, maybe because you have another meeting to go to, thank you very much for joining us here at Ready Education's product training for our May release. Like I said, documentation playlist will be shared for the recording, and you'll have many chances to speak with us as you launch these new parts of the CT Plus entitlement. So thanks for being around. Thanks for coming to the product training. We look forward to seeing you again next month. We will stick around for a few other questions, but anybody else who's leaving, thanks a lot. All right, so one question here Janice had was, how do we suggest handling the 2-week waiting period after vaccination? So somebody might say, hey, I got vaccinated, yesterday, I'm submitting my proof today, an admin looks at it tomorrow, but in theory, the vaccination really isn't fully validated until 2 weeks from now. How do we suggest handling that?
I'll actually show it here. So I'm just going to remove, sure, that's fine. Since the training is done, I can actually show it here. So basically, for example, what we want to always, like in this workflow, what we want to have is, student completes a vaccination form and they go to this pending approval process. And then after that is done, they get vaccinated. And the specific question, Dimitri, correct me if I'm wrong, is what happens if, sorry, could you repeat the question?
Just in theory, once they've said they're vaccinated, in theory, it's only 2 weeks later before they're actually fully vaccinated.
Got it, so basically what happens is we get student completes a form, pending approval, we review it. And then basically we can create a new status that says, vaccinated, stay at home for 2 weeks. Again, we can rename it how we want to. We can just say stay at home. And based on our workflow at our institution, that stay at home means you need to stay at home for 2 weeks, or we can specify stay at home for 2 weeks. And then we can tie it to, let's say, a new case status, a new campus pass that we make, for example, for students. I'll create a new one, but just for now, this is fine. And I say, okay, so over here, student completes a vaccination form. They go through this approval process. We approve them. And instead of moving them to vaccinated, we move them to vaccinated, stay at home for 2 weeks, right? And then we create a pass for that as well. Stay at home for 2 weeks. For returning to campus. So we can set it up in this manner. And yeah, so I'll tie it to this quickly. It's just so we have, so student completes a form. We do, vaccination pending approval. They've been approved. Now they have to stay home for 2 weeks. We move them over here and the student sees this pass. Once that 2-week period is over, we can move them to vaccination on our own, or we can ask student to complete another form telling us that, hey, their 2-week period is over. They're coming back. Can you, and they're just informing you. That form can be a micro survey. So it can just be simple, one question. My 2-week period is over. I'm coming back. You can review it on the cases and turn them to vaccinated, or you can just add a note and review that note after that specific date. And the administrator can change this to a vaccinated after 2 weeks.
Nice. That actually is our last question. And I do see obviously people trickling out of the webinar. So I think at this point, we really appreciate everybody coming. There aren't any other questions. Nobody else sent anything in. We'll give it another 10 seconds or so, but otherwise we really appreciate everybody's time here. Feel free to send us any other questions, and we look forward to using this software. Thanks a lot for everybody joining, everybody saying thank you and good words here, Altamash, on the software. So we really look forward to this, powering your institution's return to campus and driving student success, because we do think that students do better when they're on campus. And on that note, thanks everybody, and we'll see you at the next training.